So a new memo is telling supervisors to act with both speed and conviction when it comes to cutting underperforming federal workers. Stop wasting your time with the PIP, with the performance improvement plan. You're dragging your heels. We need to cut the dead weight. They're not performing. What you're doing, it's not working. We need to get them out of here a lot quicker. This is happening in the Department of Defense. So this makes up at least a third of all federal workers. It's a large agency. It's the largest agency. So what if a manager or supervisor decides to ignore this guidance? They ignore the memo. What happens then? If they ignore it, they could find themselves facing consequences as well. So why does the Department of Defense feel the need to threaten the managers and supervisors? Why threaten them with consequences instead of just assuming they're going to do the right thing? Well, according to the agency, they feel like if they do not threaten the supervisors, then they'll just have the status quo. Nobody will be doing anything different. Supervisors, typically in the federal workforce, they're not too keen on trying to terminate someone for a lot of reasons. First, it's a difficult conversation. Have you tried to do that? You give somebody a 3 on their performance review, and they're ready to throw hands. They're ready to fight you. Imagine if you give them a warning or a notification of termination. You're threatening someone's livelihood, so it takes it to another level. And then you have the documentation. You have to complete probably anywhere between, I think it's 25 to 50 documents or pages, 25 to 50 pages of additional work. You being a supervisor, you want to focus maybe on your performance metrics, maybe on the reports that were submitted to you, maybe on hiring more people to your team. So your poor performer on the team is adding a lot more work to your plate, and who knows how overworked you are at this particular point, but I can imagine for a lot of people, they have a huge workload. So this adds to it. Not just that, but you have to deal with unions. You have to deal with appeals. That pulls more time, energy, and effort out of your day to try to get an underperforming employee to leave your team. And this is why so often it's easier to relocate the federal worker, to reassign the federal worker. And then they end up being a problem for another supervisor, another office. Now, critics are warning that this new policy, it could make it easier to get rid of somebody who's not politically aligned with this administration. So if you don't toe the political line, if you go against the administration in any way, whether it's opinion or not, then they can get rid of you easily. Also, it comes down to the performance review process. You know, as well as I, it's a subjective process. A performance review can easily turn into a personality review. So does your supervisor like you? Despite what you've been accomplishing, do they like you? Do they like your personality? Do they laugh around you? Do they think that you're charismatic? Or is there a personality conflict? Maybe they don't agree with the way you dress, the way you look, the thoughts that you have, the opinions, what you did last weekend. They just don't like you. So for some people, it's hard to distinguish or separate the performance from the person. And things can get personal based on your personality, and that could be subjective. The whole process is subjective, but it needs to exist. There needs to be something there. Now you could say, well, we're just going to use objective measures, but you know that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. Okay, so let's look into the process. How's it going to work? First off, workers get 7 days to respond to removal notices. Deciding officials, they have 30 days for final decisions. So let's do an example. GS11. We have a GS11 over here. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah, she's been coming to work late a few times this month, and her reports aren't always the best. So you have coming to work late, that's conduct. Then you have performance, the reports not being that good. That is performance. So you got conduct, performance. Let's get rid of her. So we go ahead and give her a notice. Now she can respond to that. She has 7 days to respond. Now she's probably going to say something. Let's just say, I don't know, she's dealing with difficulties. She's not getting paid right now for one. Maybe her mother is sick. Maybe that's what's been pulling her attention, pulling her focus. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, Sarah, because in this situation, we want you gone. So the deciding official on day 45 gives Sarah the final removal letter, and she is escorted out of the building. The whole thing happens in under 50 days. That is a realistic hypothetical situation that could happen with this type of guidance. Now, the memo gives a litany of reasons on why an individual could potentially be terminated. It talks about delays in projects. You know that happens. In the government, what project doesn't get delayed? And usually it's no fault of the individual. There's like a dozen exterior factors to include signatures and approvals. But okay, delays in projects, increases in errors, written complaints, counseling records detailing deficiencies, all of those are reasons. It even has templates at the bottom of the memo. If you're a supervisor, it has a template on how to write these things up. So it guides you through there. Interestingly enough, towards the end of the memo, it mentions the DRP, the Deferred Resignation Program. It mentions VERA, the early retirement, and VSIP, the separation pay. It is combining poor performance with these incentives to get out. So they're saying if you have an underperforming employee, you can offer the DRP. Now the DRP is a little different these days. It's 12 weeks. It doesn't go over 12 weeks. So you have 3 months. That's all you're going to get. But it's surprising to me they give you anything because I thought that the way that they would roll out in DOD is they would just say, hey, you're done. These are your deficiencies, and this is why we're getting rid of you, and that would be the end. But they're actually telling agencies to go ahead and, if you think it's advantageous, offer the DRP, offer a VSIP, which is, that's money. And if you know the agency is trying to get rid of you anyway, why wouldn't you take the money? I don't know. But DOD, they also want to expand, a little bit separate from the performance review piece, but they want to expand NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. You know those, right? Because we've seen agencies like the VA, they've been using NDAs when it comes to their RIF planning, when it comes to who are we cutting next, who are we defunding, what office are we getting rid of, they've been signing NDAs. They want to do the same thing because there's been too much talk that leaves the Pentagon. Now, you're talking about defense, you're talking about the Pentagon, you're like, well, yeah, a lot of stuff is classified. You have secret, top secret, all that other stuff. But when it comes to certain things like internal policies, operational details, personnel matters, that stuff is usually shared with the public or at least your workforce. And if it's not, that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about lack of transparency, lack of trust, lack of confidence, it can go on and on and on. Now, in addition to this, if you want to hear the latest on the government shutdown, as of the recording of this, the government is still shut down. If you want to know more about that, I want you to check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.